In May 2025, Donald Trump reignited his America First agenda with a bold and controversial move. He threatened to impose a sweeping 25% tariff on all iPhones not manufactured within the United States. This wasn't just a policy proposal, it was a direct and public challenge aimed squarely at Apple, one of America's most iconic and influential companies. Trump's announcement sent immediate ripples through the business world, signaling that he was willing to take on even the biggest corporate giants to fulfill his campaign promises. The message was unmistakable. Apple could either shift its massive manufacturing operations to American soil or face steep financial penalties that could reshape its entire business model. For Apple, a company that has long relied on a global supply chain, this was more than a threat. It was a demand for a fundamental transformation in how and where its products are made. Trump's rhetoric was clear and forceful: protect American jobs, punish companies that offshore production, and force even the most powerful corporations to bring manufacturing back home. Supporters saw this as a necessary step to revive American industry and restore lost jobs, while critics warned of economic disruption and higher costs for consumers. The threat sent shockwaves through the global tech industry. Apple's supply chain, deeply rooted in China and other countries, suddenly seemed vulnerable. Executives, investors, and workers across the world scrambled to assess the potential fallout, as the possibility of a trade war loomed large. A 25% tariff on iPhones would have far-reaching consequences. For American consumers, it could mean significantly higher prices at the checkout counter. For Apple, it threatened to erode profit margins, disrupt sales, and shake investor confidence in the company's future. As the world watched, the stage was set for a high-stakes showdown between President Trump and Apple CEO Tim Cook. Both leaders faced immense pressure: Trump to deliver on his promises, and Cook to protect Apple's interests and reputation. The question on everyone's mind: would Apple bend to political pressure and bring manufacturing home, or would it find a creative way to resist and maintain its global operations? The answer could reshape not just Apple but the entire tech industry. Trump's feud with Apple wasn't new. He'd spent years publicly demanding they build their damn computers in America, making Apple a symbol of what he saw as the decline of American manufacturing. At rallies and on social media, he called out the tech giant by name, insisting that a company as iconic as Apple should lead the charge in bringing jobs back to the United States. For Trump, Apple's global supply chain was a glaring example of American innovation being shipped overseas, and he made it clear he wanted that to change. Yet, behind closed doors, Trump often praised CEO Tim Cook, recognizing his business acumen and ability to navigate complex challenges. The two developed a unique relationship, publicly adversarial but privately respectful. Cook became one of the few tech leaders who could get a direct line to the Oval Office, and Trump admired his willingness to engage, even when they disagreed. Cook, ever the diplomat, lobbied behind the scenes, explaining the realities of global supply chains and the risks of sudden tariffs. He argued that Apple's products relied on a vast network of suppliers and manufacturers, many of them based in Asia, and that abrupt policy changes could disrupt not just Apple, but the entire tech industry. Cook's approach was measured. He presented data, outlined potential consequences, and tried to find common ground. Thanks to Cook's persistent efforts, Apple had even secured a key exemption from a previous 145% tariff on Chinese-assembled iPhones. This was no small feat. It meant that, for a time, Apple could continue its operations without passing massive costs onto American consumers. Cook's behind-the-scenes negotiations were a testament to his skill in balancing business interests with political realities. But Trump's vision was simple and unwavering. He wanted Apple factories on U.S. soil, creating American jobs, regardless of the logistical hurdles or the complexities of global trade. For him, it was about national pride and economic strength, a chance to prove that America could still lead the world in manufacturing. He saw Apple as the perfect company to set an example for others. The 25% tariff threat marked a turning point. Trump was done talking, ready to act. The message was clear: comply or face serious consequences. The stakes had never been higher for Apple, and the pressure was mounting from all sides. Apple now faced a public test: defend its global model, which had fueled its rise to the top, or yield to political pressure and risk upending its entire business strategy. The company's leadership debated their options, knowing that whatever choice they made would have ripple effects across the industry. The years of tension had reached a breaking point. The world was watching as two titans, one in business, one in politics, clashed over the future of American industry and global trade. The world waited to see if Apple would stand its ground, defending its global supply chain and business model, or change course under the weight of political pressure. The outcome would shape not just Apple's future, but the future of American manufacturing and the global tech industry. Peel's answer to Trump's ultimatum? Silence. No press releases, no public fight. Tim Cook knew a media battle would only escalate things, so he focused on action, not words. Behind the scenes, Apple accelerated a plan years in the making: diversify production away from China. The company quietly instructed suppliers, especially Foxconn, to ramp up iPhone manufacturing in India. This wasn't just a tweak, it was a rapid strategic shift to protect Apple's US business from tariffs. By moving fast and staying quiet, Apple denied Trump the public confrontation he craved. Instead, Cook's team worked to make the tariff threat irrelevant. Apple's silent pivot was a masterclass in corporate strategy. The real battle was being fought in factories, not on Twitter. Apple's pivot to India wasn't just a reaction, it was the acceleration of a long-term strategy to reduce reliance on China. India offered a vast labor pool, a growing market, and a government eager for investment. Trump's tariff threat turned Apple's gradual shift into a sprint. Foxconn and Tata Electronics rapidly expanded Indian facilities, aiming to supply the US market directly. By 2025, analysts predicted Indian-made iPhones would make up 25 to 30% of global shipments, a seismic shift from the previous year. This move insulated Apple from US-China tensions and built goodwill in India. Apple's Indian pivot wasn't just defensive, it was a bold, forward-looking strategy. The company was rewriting the rules of global tech manufacturing. Apple proved it could adapt faster than politics could threaten. The numbers told the story. By spring 2025, a staggering 97% of Foxconn's $3.2 billion in Indian iPhone exports were bound directly for the United States. This wasn't just a marginal increase, it was a seismic leap from the previous year, signaling a dramatic realignment in global manufacturing and trade. The scale of this shift was unprecedented, and it sent ripples through the entire tech industry, catching the attention of analysts and competitors alike. In just 5 months, Foxconn managed to ship $4.4 billion worth of iPhones from India to America, already surpassing the total exports for the entire previous year. This rapid acceleration wasn't just about numbers, it was about Foxconn's ability to pivot and scale up operations in India at a pace few thought possible. The logistical feat required new supply chains, expanded facilities, and a workforce trained to meet Apple's exacting standards. Meanwhile, Tata Electronics, a relative newcomer to the iPhone supply chain, was making its own mark. Tata ramped up production dramatically, sending 86% of its iPhones to the US, a huge jump from just 52% the year before. This surge reflected not only Tata's growing capabilities but also Apple's confidence in diversifying its supplier base beyond China. Apple was rapidly replacing its Chinese supply line with an Indian one, moving at a speed few thought possible. The shift was visible on global trade maps, as supply routes that once flowed through China now pulsed through India's ports and factories. This was more than a business decision. It was a strategic maneuver in response to rising geopolitical tensions and the looming threat of tariffs. This wasn't just a trend, it was a strategic flood, orchestrated with precision and foresight. Apple and its partners invested heavily in infrastructure, technology, and talent, ensuring that the transition would be smooth and sustainable. Every detail, from logistics to quality control, was meticulously planned to maintain Apple's reputation for excellence. The involvement of Tata deepened Apple's ties to India, both economically and politically. With Tata's vast influence and the Indian government's support, Apple gained a powerful ally in the region. This partnership not only boosted local economies but also positioned India as a critical player in the global tech supply chain. These shifts were more than numbers. They represented millions of iPhones rerouted across continents, fundamentally undermining Trump's tariff threat in real time. Each device shipped from India was a statement of resilience and adaptability, showing Apple's determination to stay ahead of political and economic headwinds. Apple's response was already in motion before the political drama peaked. The company's leadership anticipated the risks and acted decisively, setting in place a long-term strategy that would protect its interests and ensure uninterrupted supply to its biggest market. While politicians argued and headlines blared, Apple quietly rebuilt its world behind the scenes, one shipment, one partnership, and one bold move at a time. Apple's supply chain pivot wasn't just about factories, it was a logistical blitz. In March 2025, Apple chartered planes to fly $2 billion worth of iPhones from India to the US, bypassing slow sea routes. The company worked with Indian customs to slash export clearance times from 30 hours to just 6. Every step from factory to cargo hold was optimized for speed. Tim Cook's operational expertise turned a political crisis into a logistical challenge, and solved it. By the time Trump's threats hit the headlines, Apple's new supply chain was already humming. Apple's agility outpaced politics, ensuring US shelves stayed stocked, tariff or no tariff. As Apple executed its pivot, Trump's messaging grew erratic. He shifted from broad threats to personal attacks, claiming conversations with Tim Cook that Apple never confirmed. Trump promised tariffs would create US jobs, but also said automation would keep prices low, undermining his own argument. Critics pointed out the contradiction. You can't promise both jobs and automation. The policy looked more like political theater than a real plan. This inconsistency weakened Trump's position and emboldened Apple. The tariff threat lost credibility, giving Apple confidence to continue its strategy. In the end, Trump's words trapped him, not Apple. The tariff fight marked a public rift between Trump and Tim Cook. Cook's refusal to join Trump's Middle East trip was a clear snub, and Trump responded by praising other tech leaders and criticizing Apple's India expansion. The dispute became personal, ending years of pragmatic, behind-the-scenes diplomacy. Apple could no longer rely on personal ties to shield it from political risk. Now, Apple's India pivot was framed as defiance of Trump's agenda. For Trump, it was a political betrayal. For Apple, a sign to accelerate its independence. The company shifted from careful diplomacy to building a resilient global operation. Apple was done walking the political tightrope. It was time to future-proof the business. The 2025 tariff saga revealed the limits of political bluster in a globalized world. Trump's gamble backfired. Apple didn't fold, it adapted, outmaneuvering the threat before it could bite. The episode showed that modern manufacturing is a complex global web, not easily reshaped by slogans or threats. Apple's rapid shift to India proved that production can move faster than politics. Tim Cook's silent strategic response was a masterclass in corporate agility. The balance of power as shifting tech giants can now outpace governments. The Tariff Bluff accelerated India's rise as a tech manufacturing hub and forced companies to diversify beyond China. In the end, Apple emerged stronger, more resilient, and ready for whatever political storms may come.